In this video, we tackle some of the hardest math problems across geometry, calculus, and limits using clear, step-by-step explanations. Learn powerful techniques like the extended law of sines, integration by parts, and geometric series, while discovering the strategies needed to break down complex problems, avoid common mistakes, and solve challenging math questions with confidence.
We're looking for all points P in the plane, different from A, B, and C, that make three different triangles share the same circumradius. The key is to turn same circumcircle radius into an equation involving angles at P. A circumradius is the radius of the circle passing through the triangle's three vertices. The extended law of sines connects that radius to one side and the angle opposite it, so equal radii becomes a clean comparison of fixed sides of triangle ABC with angles formed at P. Keep in mind we'll compare those ratios to the sine law in triangle ABC to pin down what P must be. This is the locus condition we'll derive and then match to triangle ABC. First, let's name the three angles at point P that each see one side of triangle ABC. Those angles will control the circumradii of triangles ABP, BCP, and CRP. Also, since these three angles go all the way around point P, they add up to a full turn. These three angles around point P must sum to a full 360 degrees. Now we use the extended law of sines, which gives a triangle's circumradius from any one side and its opposite angle. This is the right tool because in triangles ABP, BCP, and CAP, the sides AB, BC, and CA are fixed, and the opposite angles are exactly the angles at P we just named. So equal circumradii will turn into equal side over sine expressions. This formula converts a circumradius condition into a relationship between a side and the sine of the opposite angle. Let's apply that formula to each triangle, always pairing a fixed side from triangle ABC with the angle at P opposite it. In triangle ABP, the side AB sits across from angle APB, which we called alpha. Similarly, BC pairs with beta, and CA pairs with gamma. Now we impose the condition from the problem. All three circumradii are equal. When we set these three expressions equal, the factor of 2 appears everywhere, so it cancels out. That leaves a neat ratio condition. Each fixed side length must be proportional to the sine of its opposite angle at P. Here's the key comparison. Triangle ABC already has its own side-to-sine ratios from the sine law. Those ratios are fixed because A, B, and C are fixed. By matching our new ratios from the equal circumradius condition to the sine law ratios in triangle ABC, we can relate the angles at P directly to angles A, B, and C. These fixed ratios in triangle ABC are what we compare our P-based ratios to. When two fractions with the same numerator are equal, their denominators must match, so the sines must match. That gives sine of alpha equals sine of angle C, and similarly for beta and gamma. Since a triangle angle is between 0 and 180 degrees, matching sines means each angle can be either the same angle or its supplement. Alpha must be either angle C itself or the supplement of angle C. Now we use the fact from the first step. Alpha plus beta plus gamma must equal 360 degrees. In a general triangle, the only consistent way to hit 360 is to choose all three supplements. That works because A plus B plus C equals 180 degrees, so taking all three supplements adds exactly to 360 degrees. This pins alpha down to the supplement of angle C, and the same pattern holds for beta and gamma. These supplementary angle relationships are a classic signature of the orthocenter. The orthocenter is where the three altitudes meet, and that altitude geometry forces the angles at the orthocenter to be supplements of the triangle's angles. So if a point produces these three specific angles with A, B, and C, it must be the orthocenter. We've shown the angles at P must match exactly the angles that occur at the orthocenter. So P has to be that same point because it fits the defining angle pattern with the vertices A, B, and C. That means the locus is just a single point. This identifies the unique point P that satisfies all three equal circumradius conditions. So the only point that works is the orthocenter of triangle ABC, as long as it is not one of the vertices. If triangle ABC is right-angled, the orthocenter is actually a vertex, which the problem forbids. So then there is no valid point P. The locus is a single point, the orthocenter. We used the extended law of sines to rewrite equal circumradii as equal side over sine ratios involving angles at P. Then we compared those ratios to the sine law in triangle ABC, which forced each angle at P to be the supplement of the corresponding angle of triangle ABC. That exact angle pattern identifies P as the orthocenter, so the locus is just that one point. We're finding the area of the region bounded by two curves and the vertical line at x equals 1. The key is to figure out where the curves meet, then integrate the vertical distance between them over that x interval. Now, we'll choose from these answer options once we compute the enclosed area. Because both boundaries are given as y in terms of x, vertical slices are the cleanest approach. We first find the left boundary by solving where the two curves intersect. Then integrate top minus bottom until we hit the vertical line at x equals 1. Let's list what we're given and what we're trying to compute. The curves are y equals x times e to the x and y equals x times e to the negative x. And the region is closed on the right by x equals 1. So we'll need the x interval that closes the region, and then we'll compute the area between the curves on that interval. To find where the enclosed region starts on the left, we set the two curves equal, because intersection points happen where they share the same y value at the same x. Factoring out x makes it clear what solves the equation. That gives us x equals 0 as the intersection. That helps close the region with the line x equals 1. This intersection x value is the left boundary of the enclosed region. Next, we need to know which curve is on top between x equals 0 and x equals 1, because area uses upper minus lower. On this interval, e to the x is larger than e to the negative x, and x is positive, so multiplying by x keeps the inequality direction. That means y equals x times e to the x is the upper curve, and y equals x times e to the negative x is the lower curve. This tells us the correct subtraction order, so the area comes out positive. Now we use the area between curves idea with vertical slices. Each slice has width dx and height equal to the top y value minus the bottom y value. Adding up all those slice areas from the left boundary to x equals 1 gives the total enclosed area. This is the vertical distance between the curves, which is what we integrate to get area. We plug in our bounds and our top and bottom functions. The left bound is x equals 0 from the intersection, and the right bound is x equals 1 from the given vertical line. Then we split the integral into two pieces, so we can compute each one more easily. Both integrals have the same pattern, x times an exponential. That's a classic signal for integration by parts, because differentiating x simplifies it, while integrating the exponential stays simple. The rule tells us how to trade one tough product integral for a simpler one, which is exactly what we want here. This rule is what we use to integrate a product, like x times an exponential function. Let's compute the antiderivative of x times e to the x using integration by parts. We choose u equals x so that du is just dx, and we choose dv equals e to the x dx so that v stays e to the x. After applying the rule, the remaining integral becomes just e to the x, which is straightforward to finish. Now, we do the same for x times e to the negative x. We again pick u equals x, so it simplifies when differentiated. And we integrate e to the negative x to get negative e to the negative x. Applying integration by parts gives an antiderivative we can use for the definite integral from 0 to 1. Now we plug these antiderivatives back into our area expression. and evaluate from 0 to 1. Carefully substitute the endpoints, keeping track of negatives in the second term, because that's where sign mistakes often happen. After simplifying the arithmetic, everything collapses nicely to a single fraction involving e. So the area enclosed by the two curves and the vertical line at x equals 1 is 2 over e. This is the final area of the enclosed region. We first found where the curves meet to get the left boundary at x equals 0, and we used the given line, x equals 1, as the right boundary. Then we identified the upper curve on that interval and integrated upper minus lower. Finally, we used integration by parts on both product integrals and evaluated from 0 to 1 to get 2 over e. We're asked to find the limit as n grows without bound of a product of many roots of 5. The key is to rewrite the roots in a form that lets us combine the factors cleanly. Let's look at the answer choices. Then we'll compute the limit and match it. Because every factor is a root of the same number 5, we can rewrite each root as a power of 5. Then multiplying becomes adding exponents, and those exponents form a geometric series whose sum has a simple limit. Let's name the product of the first n factors as p sub n. Giving it a symbol helps us transform it step by step, and then take the limit at the end. Now we use the root to exponent rule. An mth root is the same as raising to the power 1 over m. This is the right move because powers with the same base combine nicely when multiplied. This rule converts roots into exponents, so we can combine the product using exponent laws. Applying that rule to each factor turns every root of 5 into a power of 5. So the product becomes 5 to the 1/2 times 5 to the 1/4, and so on, up to 5 to the 1 over 2 to the n. Next, we use the exponent rule for multiplying like bases. When the base is the same, we add the exponents. That's exactly what we need here, since every factor has base 5. Same base means we can add exponents, turning the whole product into 1 power of 5. Using that rule repeatedly, the product collapses into a single power of 5. The new exponent is just the sum of all those fractional exponents from 1/2 down to 1 over 2 to the n. Now our job is to evaluate that exponent sum, which is a geometric series. We use the finite geometric series formula because it gives the exact sum of the first n terms, and then we can take the limit. Our exponent is a geometric series, so we will sum it using this formula. Here the ratio is 1/2, since each term is half the previous one. Substituting r equals 1/2 into the formula and simplifying gives a very clean result for the sum. Replace the exponent sum with 1 minus 1 over 2 to the n, and then take the limit. As n goes to infinity, 1 over 2 to the n goes to 0, so the exponent approaches 1. So, the infinite product approaches 5. That matches choice D. This is the limiting value of the product as n grows without bound. We rewrote each root of 5 as a power of 5, then combined the product by adding exponents. The exponent became a geometric series whose sum approaches 1, so the whole product approaches 5 to the first power.
We hope you liked the video. To create more such videos, please visit think10x.ai.